One not necessarily for the fathers. And my purpose of the sermon today is to help the young fathers. And I see our young fathers and kids are not here today. They're all probably on vacation or visiting somewhere else, which is fine. But I'm going to give my message anyway. It starts out, children, Ephesians 6. Obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And I read that. And I'm sure you all read it many times. But I missed this little part on the end. Obey your children in the Lord. And that means something to me. That means obey your godly parents. Honor your father and your mother, which is the commandment, the first one. And it's got a promise that things will go well with you. Any of you ever grow up? And if you did something wrong, your parents would say, well, this isn't going to go well with you. I've been there. And you're guaranteed a long life. Now, the one I want to talk about is number 4, fathers. This is probably Heather's favorite. Do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. All my life, nobody has given me a good definition of exasperate. Some say, well, it means don't tick them off, don't upset them, etc., etc., etc. I didn't like the definition. I thought it was phony and cheap. And you notice Jesus, he always talks in parables. You notice that? And he talks about farmers. He makes it in English, Hebrew, so everybody could understand it. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Now, I could give my example about transistors, protons, electrons, resistors, capacitors. None of you would get it. Well, some of you would. So I'm going to use it in a farmer sense. We got 2 guys over by electric fence, and they each got a son. The one father walks up to the fence. He goes, touch it. Go ahead, touch it. So the son goes up to it, and he touches it. And he gets zapped. And I don't know about you, I've been zapped. Not once, not twice, many times, and not on purpose. But the father says, touch it. And the kids get zapped, and the dad laughs his head off. And he said, son, what did you learn today? Don't touch an electric fence. That's right. See, you learned something. The second father with a son. They walk up to the electric fence. The father says, don't touch it. It hurts. Don't touch it. The kid walks up to it. He's a boy. What? He gets zapped and it hurts. He's jumping around like crazy, shaking his hand. His dad said, told ya, don't touch it. It hurts. Son, did you learn something today? He says, yeah, I learned don't touch an electric fence because it hurts. You see the 2 differences between the fathers? The one said, touch it, you're going to learn something. And the other one says, don't touch it. Because if you do, you're going to learn something. To me, the first one exasperated his child. So how do the 2 sons end up in life? They both learned the same lesson, don't touch that fence. It hurts. But the one learned to trust his father because he spoke the truth. Adam and Eve. They had it made. They're in the Garden of Eden. They have everything they want, everything they need. God says, don't eat that fruit. Don't eat it. Little serpent comes out there and he goes, eat it. Adam says, you're not supposed to. But it looks so good. So she grabs it. She takes a bite. It's fabulous. She hands it to her husband, Adam. He takes a bite. Whoa, it is good. God did the same thing. He told us what's right, what's wrong. It's in my book. It's in your book. It's called the Bible. God did not exasperate Adam and Eve. He told them, don't do it. They did it anyway. That's kind of like us. I think every one of us is a sinner in here. No, if I read the Bible right, we're all sinners. Each and every one of us. God told us what's right and what's wrong. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. That's tough. Especially if your neighbor's a jerk. That's really tough. And some people are just flat out negative all the time. You're supposed to love those people and share with them. Growing up, I have a problem. And I hope nobody in here does it. I have a problem with parents that yell all the time. You know what I mean? Every time the kid does something, knock it off! Always hollering at their kids or their spouses. That's not how I grew up. And I don't think it's necessary. Don't yell. I picture Jesus setting the example. You know, he was whipped. He didn't yell. He went to court. He didn't yell. Matter of fact, at one time he never said a word. People were abusing him. One time, in my opinion, it doesn't say it in the Bible, my opinion, Jesus yelled because he was ticked. Any guesses when? Right on. Where?
In the temple.
In the temple. Because they took his father's house and they were selling animals so people could sacrifice them. And they were making a killing off them. He went in, and I believe he yelled. He took those tables and he flipped them over. I believe there is a time to yell. And if you're always yelling at your kids, and it's important and you yell at them, guess what? It's not going to soak in. So in my opinion, don't yell at your kids. Does God yell at us? No. But he does discipline us when we need it. He disciplines those he loves. If you don't yell, I think it's wonderful, but there is a time when you can yell and your kids are going to hear you. Story I told before. That little blonde lady over there, the good looking one. Oh, yeah, it's my daughter. One in front of Dave. I yelled at her once that I can remember in my life. Her and her brother were playing catch in the front yard. Either she missed it or he threw it wrong. I don't know which. But she was heading across that street and there was a car a-flying coming. And I yelled at her, Heather, stop! And she froze. Like she had brakes on there. And the car goes, you remember that, Heather?
Nope.
Okay, I do.
I remember being spanked.
I didn't yell though, you probably had it coming. Yep. Oh, wait a minute, let's go back to that. Children, obey your parents in the Lord.
And look how good you turned out, right?
That it may go well with you, and you might live a long time. You know, I only remember getting spanked once. I didn't deserve it. You know what? That's probably why I remember it, because I didn't deserve it. Because I know I got spanked. I had to. I could see my mother. Yeah, he got spanked a lot. Yeah. I probably had it coming. When you got it coming, you know what? You need it. You needed it. And then, you ever notice little kids, especially boys, want to be just like their dad? You ever notice that? I think it's the coolest thing on earth. If their dad's a fireman, they want to be a fireman. If he's a policeman, I want to be a policeman. If he's a mechanic, he wants to be a mechanic. Kids want to be just like their dad. That's wrong. Usually a good thing. Usually. I got a friend, one of the nicest men on earth. He would do anything for anybody. He's got a big heart. But he chews tobacco. That's not a sin in some people's eyes. And he would walk around and he would spit on the ground. Little boy's only this big, just old enough to walk. And every time his dad spit, he spit. Cute. But it's gross. You know, it's just gross. And then there's this TV show, Funniest Videos, and I think some of them are just disgusting. It shows a little kid golfing, and he swings, and he misses it, and he takes his club, and he smacks the ground, and he swears. He got a dad that taught him that, and that's wrong. You gotta watch what you do, parents and grandparents, because your kids are watching you. They're gonna do exactly what you do. Luke. This is a parable you all know about. And I'm going to read most of it, but I can tell you by heart anyway. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of my inheritance now." So the father was a kind man, and he divided the inheritance between the older son and the younger son. Not long after that, the younger son got together with all he had, and he set off to a distant country, and he squandered his wealth in wild living. After he spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country. He was broke. He was in need. So he went and he hired himself out to a citizen. His job was to feed the hogs. And the hogs ate better than he did. And apparently he wasn't allowed to eat what he gave the hogs.
Where are you at? What chapter?
I'm sorry. 15. This is hard when I'm paraphrasing the follow, but you can try. 17. When he came to his sense, you got that? The young kid got his inheritance. He left the country. He squandered it on wild women and other things. When he came to his sense, in other words, he finally listened to his dad. How many of my father's hired men have food to spare? Here I am, starving to death. I will set out and I'm going to go back to my father and say to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer to be worthy. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son." So make me like your hired men. Do you know how hard that was for that son to admit he sinned? Some of us have trouble admitting when we sin. Happy Days used to be one of the best shows there was on TV. Fonzie. There's one word he couldn't say. You remember what it was?
Wrong.
Wrong. He couldn't say he was wrong. Some people can't admit when they're wrong. So he got up and he went back to his father. But while he was still a long ways off, his father saw him. He was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, he threw his arms around him, and he kissed him. His son was a long ways away, and his father saw him. His father never gave up on his son. And it doesn't say it here, but I can guarantee you that father was praying for that son. He had fallen away from God. He'd fallen away from his father. Don't give up on your kids. Pray for them. And hopefully they'll come back. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm not worthy to even be called your son anymore. But the father said to the servant, quick, bring the best robe, put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. In other words, this guy was so poor, he probably didn't have sandals or shoes on. The father, bring the best. Bring the fattened calf, kill it. We're going to have a feast and we're going to celebrate. For this son that was lost is found again. I know it's a parable, but you know what? That's the same thing with us. How many of us in our life has fallen away from God? Turned our back on God. And whether you know it or not, God did not and does not and will never turn his back on you. Hard to believe. God loves each and every one of us. The sad part is he had an older brother who said, Dad, I've done everything you asked. I never left. I never wasted my money. Why does he get a ring, new sandals, a robe, a feast, a celebration? And I don't get anything. He said, son, you've already got everything. Your son was lost. Now he's found. Same way with us as Christians. When somebody's lost and they're brought back to Christ, the angels in heaven rejoice. They really do. And some of us that are Christians are jealous. I used to think a person that did not know God, that sinned a lot, did a lot of things they shouldn't have done, when they became to know Christ, they went from this side to this side. I thought they have an advantage. They know what it's like to really feel saved. But you know what? That's wrong. It's quite a feeling to know you're saved. Because those people that once were lost always have this thing in their back of their mind. Do I deserve to get to heaven? Because I was a sinner. My answer to that is absolutely. If you believe in Jesus Christ, your name's written in that book of life. If you live your life for him. Because Satan even believes in it. And the demons believe in Christ. But they tremble because they don't know him. God is our Father. Happy Father's Day to God. He created you. He created me. we're gonna have a little film that I hope it puts a little smile on your face. Mike's gonna play it shortly.